You walk into a room and stop. You cannot remember why you came. The thought was there a moment ago, and now it is gone. You start reading something important. Halfway through the page, you realize your mind has drifted. You start again, carefully, and something still feels different. Maybe mornings feel slower, words surface late, focus breaks fast, and quietly, you have told yourself the story everyone repeats. This is just aging. But what if that explanation is wrong? What if the real issue is not that your brain is getting old, but that your brain is running low on cellular energy? Because if the problem begins with energy, the story does not end with decline. Your brain can rebuild, and that changes everything. Brain fog is often treated as a memory problem. People assume the brain is losing its ability to store information. That sounds logical, but it misses the real mechanism. The brain is not limited by storage, it is limited by energy. Every thought, every memory, every moment of focus depends on billions of neurons communicating in real time. That communication requires constant cellular fuel. When that supply becomes unstable, signals between neurons grow weaker, slower, and less precise. Inside each neuron are tiny structures called mitochondria, microscopic power plants that convert nutrients into usable energy. When their output declines, the brain enters a state of energy conservation. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt, learn, and rewire, weakens. Not because the brain is broken, but because the fuel system is underperforming. Researchers like Peter Attia and David Sinclair point to the same root. In many cases, cognitive slowdown does not begin with age. It begins with metabolism. 3 shifts tend to converge after 40. The first is metabolic flexibility. When we are younger, the brain moves easily between fuel sources. Over time, that flexibility weakens. The brain becomes too dependent on one source and loses efficiency when supply fluctuates. The second is chronic glucose overload. Years of frequent blood sugar spikes create a low-grade inflammatory environment. Neurons do not die, but they respond more slowly, as if their engines are working harder for the same output. The third is behavioral. Life becomes routine, predictable. The brain stops receiving the novelty and challenge it needs to grow. As Rangan Chatterjee often emphasizes, the brain is built to respond to challenge. When stimulation disappears, adaptation slows. The real paradox is this. Your brain after 40 still has the capacity to evolve. The environment around it simply stops asking it to. For a long time, science believed cognitive decline followed one rule: plasticity fades with age. Modern research tells a different story. The brain does not primarily lose plasticity. What it often loses is the signal that tells it to rebuild. 3 biological signals regulate neural renewal. The first is mitochondrial energy. When cells generate abundant energy, neurons become more willing to form new connections. The second is metabolic stress in the right dose. Small, controlled challenges activate repair pathways that strengthen cells. The third is exposure to new learning. Novelty tells the brain that adaptation is necessary. When those signals disappear, the brain becomes cautious. When they return, something remarkable happens. Neurons communicate more efficiently, synapses strengthen, and dormant circuits wake up again. The brain does not need to be replaced. It needs to be reactivated. If brain fog begins with declining cellular energy, the path back to clarity starts with restoring that energy. Not through extreme interventions, but through a few biological systems your brain has relied on for thousands of years. The first step is resetting fuel delivery. Modern eating patterns keep glucose elevated most of the day, weakening metabolic flexibility. Allowing defined eating windows and reducing constant glucose spikes encourages the body to produce ketones, an alternative and highly efficient fuel for neurons. As Eric Berg often explains, when the brain begins using ketones regularly, mental clarity returns in ways people do not expect. The second step is deliberate novelty. Neuroplasticity is triggered by the unfamiliar. Learning an instrument, writing by hand, practicing coordination, placing yourself in new environments. These send a clear signal to the nervous system to adapt. Routine protects comfort. Novelty builds neurons. The third step is reactivating mitochondrial power. Short, intense movement challenges both muscle and brain. Cold or heat exposure stimulates powerful adaptive responses. Deep restorative sleep gives neurons the time they need to repair and reorganize. When these triggers combine, mitochondrial activity rises, growth factors increase, and neural repair accelerates. When this process begins to work, the first change is rarely memory. It is clarity. Mornings feel sharper sooner. Decisions stop feeling heavy. Focus stretches. Curiosity returns. Ideas surface faster. These are not random improvements. They are signs that neuronal communication is becoming efficient again. The brain is expanding its capabilities instead of protecting what remains. Here's the truth most people never hear. Cognitive health after 40 is not determined by age alone. It is shaped by strategy. Two people of the same age can walk completely different mental trajectories, not because of luck, but because of metabolic and behavioral design. Aging does not remove your capacity. What disappears is the deliberate training that keeps it alive. Your brain after 40 is not a fading version of what you had before. It is a system waiting for the right signals to rebuild itself. And there is one specific daily practice that accelerates this regeneration. Most people ignore it, yet it has a profound effect on how quickly the brain restores clarity and resilience. That is exactly what we explore in the next video.